Greetings and welcome back to Room 303. We continue in our study of satire from page 986 of your hymnal and comparing satire by taking a look at Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, the text that we just treated, and now Henry Alford's Big Kiss. We're gonna do just a cutting from this text. 987 is where I'm reading a little bit about Henry Alford, to put it in your notes. Alford calls himself a, quote, investigative humorist, end quote, a comic journalist, born in 1962, by the way, a comic journalist who unearths humor wherever it hides. Armed with dry wit and charm, he uncovers what makes popular culture funny, amazing, or outrageous. Big Kiss is actually Big Kiss, one actor's desperate attempt to claw his way to the middle, chronicles Alford's adventures as he tries to become an actor. He faces humiliation at the hands of acting teachers and directors, but he relishes his minor victory as an extra in a Godzilla film. The title of Alford's book comes from an adventure in self-promotion, actually. To get publicity as an aspiring actor, he tries to persuade owners of Manhattan delicatessens to hang his photo among all the other celebrity photos. He offers to write the words Big Kiss on it, suggesting a personal relationship that does not exist. His plan fails. He's more successful working as an extra in the Godzilla 1998 remake that starred Matthew Broderick, okay? So in this selection now, in this excerpt from Big Kiss, Alford, a young actor, will take a job as an extra in the remake of Godzilla. Working on location, he waits with hundreds of other extras and longs for a line of dialogue. Although this doesn't happen, he enjoys the long, arduous day of shooting the same scene 20 times, pretending to run from the monster and watching the outrageous performances of all the other extras who just as desperately try to expand their tiny roles. We're going to ask at the end of this reading, so write it down at 2B, what is satiric about this reading, and what is it that Alford is making fun of or satirizing in regards to American culture, acting culture? Let's go ahead now and just enjoy the reading itself. Follow along closely and we'll be ready to come back then to have some conversation. The Big Kiss.
From Big Kiss, one actor's desperate attempt to claw his way to the middle, by Henry Alford. In the acting profession, as in life, you must make the most of your tiny allotment. He who waits until he has been cast as Othello to pull out all the stops is setting himself up for disappointment. It will be Othello, not Desdemona, who is strangled in this production. So when a classmate told me she was helping to cast extras for the remake of Godzilla, I quickly recommended myself for duty. I clearly had not slayed them at improv camp in Wisconsin. Here was an opportunity to channel my feelings of disappointment into bravura acting. And perhaps, in so doing, to achieve every extra's dream, to be awarded a line of dialogue. My classmate called me 2 days later and said that the filming, to be done that Sunday, would involve prodigious amounts of stage rain. I assured her that I was no stranger to adverse meteorological conditions, natural and man-made, and as such could play wet. The pay for Non-Screen Actors Guild talent was $75. I needed to be available all day and night. I was to wear a raincoat and carry a black umbrella. The harbinger of location shooting in a metropolitan area is a table on the sidewalk heaped high with haggard bagels. When I arrived at the appointed location in the financial district that Sunday morning at 6:30, although the chaos I found there, teamsters bickering over sports scores, thick black cables veining the streets as if to depict the late stages of arterial sclerosis, had all the earmarks of filmmaking, I did not see the telltale breadstuffs and so was moved to ask the first walkie-talkie wielding individual I saw, "Where are the bagels?" "Are you SAG or non-SAG?" she asked. "Non. You're in the tent." She pointed to a huge, dun-colored tent around which loitered hundreds of men and women, many of whom were also wearing raincoats and carrying umbrellas. "My people," I exclaimed. I walked over to the tent and, seeing a line formed at one end of the 20 or so tables thereunder, queued up. 4 minutes later, the casting people had checked my name off on a list, and I had been given a voucher, the form by which I would be paid. All was actor clogged. I could barely find an empty seat at the table. I was glad I finally did. We proceeded to wait for 2 hours. During this time, small groups of us were presented to a young, unshaven man from wardrobe who was, by turns, exhausted and sniffy. He looked at the camouflage cap that the 40-something gentleman ahead of me in line was wearing and said, "I don't know anyone who would wear that cap." Then he scanned me, that is to say, my tan raincoat, my black umbrella, and my wingtips encased in black rubbers, and yawned, "You're fine." Shortly thereafter, we were herded down to the set in groups of 30 or 40. The set was Federal Hall, the majestic site of George Washington's inauguration, rich in Corinthian columns and impressive stairways, which dead-ends Broad Street in the manner of a lion's gaping jaws. Halfway up its main stairs was a podium, festooned with red, white, and blue bunting, and a sign reading, "Re-elect Mayor Ebert." I wondered aloud, "Where's the reptile?" The self-appointed expert in my group explained, "They're going to blue screen him in later." We lined up on the sidewalk and then, one by one, walked through a small cordoned-off area where a sweet, pale, bespectacled man was handing out props. It looked like about a third of the extras were being given still cameras and two-thirds were being given placards reading, "Re-elect Ebert." "I hope I get a camera," the woman standing behind me in line said.
998.
Eager to be filmed shooting at Godzilla, I responded, "I hope I get a taser." Moments later, I was handed 3 props. A fake 35mm camera, a fanny pack, and a press badge. I looked at the badge. The first thing I noticed was that the photo on it was of the man who had just handed it to me. Hovering over the photo was the name Sean Hallworth, and the call letters WAQR. These call letters sounded more like radio than TV to me, but then why was I carrying a still camera? Rather than let this seeming contradiction bother me, I decided to base my character interpretation on it. What if Sean Hallworth labored under the impression that if he took a good enough photograph, it would be aired on the radio? Wouldn't this, character-wise, raise the stakes and imbue him with the driven quality that makes for an interesting dramatic character? Poor Sean, you can almost hear the editorial staff at WAQR whispering over the water cooler. If only he understood that ours is an oral medium. But 5 minutes later, an assistant director who had assembled about 100 of us in front of Federal Hall took away my camera. "I based my character interpretation on that," I exclaimed, hoping that this would translate to him as serious actor, could handle a line of dialogue. "I need it for up front," he reported tersely, then walked to the front of the crowd. One of my fellow colleagues, a vivacious English as a second language tutor and sometimes actress in her early 30s with whom I had fallen into conversation back in the tent, witnessed my loss of camera and counseled, "You were probably overpropped anyway." "Yes," I responded. My work was getting proppy. We proceeded to work for almost 11 hours, lunch break included, on variations of a single shot. In it, about 400 of us New Yorkers are standing in the rain, listening to Mayor Ebert, Michael Lerner, give a speech. All of a sudden, we hear a thump. Some of the crowd, those born between January and April to be precise, look behind them down Broad Street, whence the sound originates. The mayor continues to netter on when thump. May through August now look down the street too, expressing restlessness, a sense of discomfort, the vague possibility that this little piece of earth they call their own will soon be rent asunder.
999.
Then, seconds later, a third thump. Godzilla appears, causing the crowd, regardless of natal season, to shriek with abandon, perhaps to drop umbrellas or placards, and to run off in a prescribed direction. Since I was born in February, my prescribed direction was straight ahead, up the 30 or so stairs of Federal Hall. So, hearing my thump, I would look behind me down Broad Street in highly nuanced, ever-burgeoning panic, erupt into a despair-tinged Edvard Munch-caliber scream on hearing the third thump, run northward, negotiating my way through what was by now a very festival of bad acting, ascend the stairs 2 at a time, look behind me again while closing my umbrella, note the elegant adherence to decorum even in the face of apocalypse, and then hurl my body against Federal Hall's massive stone doors in an attempt to gain entry. I loved this work. I would be hard-pressed to recount any event from my personal or professional life that more accurately typified the phrase, crazy fun. Yes, my colleagues and I encountered much wetness, the rain machines were assiduous in their ministrations. Moreover, no lines of dialogue were being doled out by the director or assistant directors. But the acting task at hand wedded blitzkrieg strength drama with stuntman strength athleticism, and as such was wholly engaging. Screaming at full force in the canyons of Wall Street on a Sunday morning was particularly liberating. On the first few takes, by the end of the day we would do more than 20, I would yell, "There he is!" By the 8th take I was screaming, "Here comes trouble!" By the late afternoon, punchy, I was shrieking in an accent vaguely Caribbean, vaguely Cockney, "Zilla monster ate me baby!" causing the self-appointed expert to glare at me and say, "Let's keep it real, huh?" This statement might have chastened were it not for the other extras. Seldom have I seen such a preponderance of scenery chewing. My colleagues' every utterance and movement seemed to offer ready proof that vaudeville is not dead. Several of the extras, in an attempt to make themselves noticed, would run directly at the camera. Another one, a tall 50-something woman who appeared to be a recent graduate of the Lucille Ball School of Clown Makeup, made such a spectacle of repeatedly dropping and then retrieving her umbrella that an assistant director was forced to take the umbrella away from her. The woman, divested of her gimmick, then devoted her energies to shrieking. "That woman just screamed right in my eardrum," the ESL tutor told me between takes, motioning with her head toward the offender. Yes, I acknowledge, her work is particularly broad.
All right, let's turn now and have some critique specifically of this satiric passage. What is it that specifically we are satirizing? Let's first of all go to level 1 really quickly and just give a brief summary. In this cutting, of course, we will have Alford, who is going to hope that he gets, just one line of dialogue as he's an extra in film. It's interesting, often students, when they read this passage, it never has occurred to them that when they're watching a movie and there's a whole bunch of people in a scene, but they don't have anything to say, they're just doing something, those are what we call extras. And they are actually paid. They are actually actors of a kind, and they're given this like insignificant role. And of course here, he's just hoping for one moment of glory so he can say, I was an actor and I had a line of dialogue. Of course, let's now jump to 2A. The major message here is people will often do anything for the opportunity of some kind of fame, some experience of fame, to be known at all. Oh, please, if I could just get into a film, and if I could be an extra in a film, and maybe have some dialogue in a film, that would be enough for me. Of course, notice at 2B, the satiric voice of Alford. Let's put that in our notes. The satiric voice of Alford. Notice, he seems to be kind of making fun of a couple of things. One, he obviously is making fun of people's need to feel important and significant, even though they are in a really insignificant situation through and through. Two, he seems to be making fun of the whole world of filmmaking and acting, that so regularly people are put in these circumstances where for hour upon hour upon hour, somebody has to do the most silly or inane activity, and we're finally going to videotape only a split second of all of this. That is to say, the acting profession can be perceived here as being satirically spoofed as silly, right? Not very serious at all, even though, of course, the film Godzilla is hoping to make lots and lots of money. It's obviously, in its creation for Alford, it's all kind of silly, and the whole experience is kind of really silliness in some way. Okay, let's jump quickly to 3A. Well, obviously we could write down that this is in some ways very much akin to our reading of The Importance of Being Earnest. Both texts will make fun of certain kinds of people who try to take themselves more seriously than they probably should, right? You can think of as well of your own text that comes to mind. What is the film that you like or the TV show that you like where somebody is kind of, made fun of because they're supposed to be acting like they're all serious and all that, and then, stuff happens to them and they kind of get jacked or whatever. Finally, at 3A, you can obviously get a sense of where this one's headed, right? What's a time in your life when you took yourself probably a little more seriously than you should have? And maybe somebody called you out for it, right? They were like, dude, you need to just dial it back or whatever. What's a time in your life when that happened for you, right? Okay. Well, there you go. An introduction to a couple of works of satire. I hope that maybe they made you smile a little bit. Thank you.